What if I told you that a humble janitor, like someone who literally spent his entire life sweeping floors at a department store, could easily outinvest a Harvard-trained surgeon?
Or even, a brilliant tech executive.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking right at you, the listener, because our mission today is to completely rewire how you think about wealth.
Yeah, it's a big promise, but I think the source material really delivers on it.
It really does. We're pulling apart Morgan Housel's brilliant work, The Psychology of Money, and let's just set a ground rule immediately. We're not going to be staring at spreadsheets today.
Thank goodness.
Right, no digging into stock charts, no memorizing complicated math formulas, none of that.
Which is such a relief because treating finance purely as a math problem is usually where people make their first completely catastrophic mistake. We are focusing entirely on behavioral science.
And human psychology.
Wow.
And to really ground that for you, consider two totally contrasting stories we found in the notes.
Oh, these stories are wild.
Right. So first, imagine this wildly successful tech executive. He's brilliant in his 20s, patents key router technology, sells several companies, just super successful.
On paper, he's doing everything right.
On paper, yeah. But his relationship with money is utterly chaotic. He would literally go to the Pacific Ocean with his friends and skip $1,000 gold coins into the water.
Just skipping them like flat rocks.
Like flat rocks, just throwing away $1,000 a toss. And another time, he deliberately smashed a $500 hotel lamp.
Oh, I remember this. Just so he could aggressively peel off $5,000 in cash and throw it in the manager's face.
Yeah, it's wild.
What's fascinating here is that it's a profound spectacle of insecurity, right? It's masquerading as power.
And inevitably, the guy went completely broke. But now, contrast him with a man named Ronald Read.
The janitor.
Yes, Ronald was a janitor and a gas station attendant in rural Vermont, first in his family to graduate high school.
Super humble beginnings.
Swept floors at JCPenney for 17 years, chopped firewood for a hobby, lived in this really modest two-bedroom house.
But then he dies in 2014 at the age of 92, and he makes international headlines.
Right, because he left behind a fortune of over $8 million.
$8 million.
And he gave most of it to his local hospital and library. And there was no lottery win here, no secret inheritance, just decades of quietly sweeping floors and patiently investing.
When you look at those two lives side by side, it really establishes the core premise of everything we're exploring today. Financial success is not a hard science based on raw intelligence.
It's a soft skill.
Exactly. It's a soft skill where how you behave is significantly more important than what you actually know. I mean, you will never see a story about a janitor stepping into an operating room and outperforming top surgeons, right?
So it'd be terrifying.
Right. You won't see a gas station attendant designing a better skyscraper than elite structural engineers.
Yeah.
But in investing, the humble janitor can completely eclipse the brilliant tech executive.
Just because he mastered the behavioral psychology, while the executive let his ego drive the car. Okay, let's unpack this. Because if behavior is the ultimate driver of wealth, why do so many people exhibit behaviors that look completely irrational from the outside?
That's the million-dollar question.
Like, if we all have access to roughly the same information now, why do people make such wildly different financial choices? I've been thinking about this kind of like food preferences.
Okay, how so?
Well, if someone grew up in a really harsh, dry desert, they're going to view water rationing and conservation with a level of intense anxiety.
Oh, sure.
But someone who grew up living right next to a massive freshwater lake in Michigan, they'll look at that desert person and think that anxiety is completely irrational.
Right, because they've never had to worry about it.
Exactly. Neither person is crazy. They just have different lived data. How do we stop judging others and honestly ourselves for our financial decisions once we realize we're all operating on incomplete data?
Well, the notes bring up this mind-blowing statistic to answer that. It says your personal experiences make up maybe 0.000001% of what has happened in the world.
A tiny fraction.
A completely microscopic fraction. But those same experiences make up 80% of how you think the world works.
Wow.
We all navigate life firmly anchored to this incredibly localized worldview, while totally convincing ourselves we're seeing the big picture. John F. Kennedy is a perfect example of this.
Great Depression story, right?
Yeah. When he was asked what he remembered about the Great Depression, he openly admitted he had no firsthand knowledge of the suffering. I mean, his family actually got richer during the 1930s.
That's crazy to think about.
The only thing he directly saw was his father hiring extra gardeners just to give people jobs so they could afford to eat. His experience of the defining economic catastrophe of his generation was completely detached from the average American's reality.
So if JFK and, like, a struggling farmer from the Dust Bowl both try to make a financial decision in 1940, they are operating on entirely different psychological baselines.
Exactly. Every decision, no matter how irrational it looks on a spreadsheet, checks a mental box for the person making it at that exact moment.
And that dynamic makes so much sense of the lottery ticket paradox, which is something that always felt so baffling to
Oh,
me.
well, the spending statistics.
Yeah, the lowest income households in the U.S. spend about $400 a year on lottery tickets. But at the exact same time, a massive percentage of those same households report that they couldn't come up with $400 for an emergency.
Which to an outsider seems insane.
Right. If you're sitting on a comfortable savings account, that looks utterly crazy. Why blow your only safety net on a 1 in a million chance?
Because if you try to understand the underlying emotional mechanism rather than the mathematical one, it makes a tragic sort of internal sense.
How so?
Well, for someone living paycheck to paycheck, where saving enough for a down payment or retirement seems mathematically impossible, buying that lottery ticket is the only time they get to hold a tangible dream.
A dream of attaining the comfort that wealthier people just take for granted.
Exactly. They aren't buying a financial derivative, they are buying a moment of hope. We teach finance like it's physics, with strict laws and rigid rules, but it actually behaves like psychology. It's full of emotion, trauma, and nuance.
Which means we really need to stop judging others. And honestly, we have to stop judging ourselves for past financial decisions.
Definitely.
Because if we accept that everyone's worldview is somewhat accidental based on where and when they were born, we have to look at the massive invisible forces pulling the strings.
You're talking about luck and risk.
I am. We're talking about luck and risk.
If siblings, you really can't discuss one without acknowledging the other because they are both just the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort.
Let's look at the math behind Bill Gates' early years, because it perfectly illustrates the sheer scale of luck.
Yeah, the Lakeside School story.
Right. So in 1968, there were roughly 303 million high schoolers in the world. Out of all of them, only about 300 attended Lakeside School in Seattle.
And that school was special because
It just so happened to be the one school in the world that had the cash and the sheer forward-thinking vision to buy a computer terminal for its students. That is a 1 in a million head start.
And Gates himself admits that, right?
It does. He says that without Lakeside, there would be no Microsoft. He is brilliant, obviously, but he also caught a 1 in a million tailwind.
And the inverse of that tailwind is the story of his best friend, Kent Evans. By all accounts from those early days, Kent was just as brilliant as Bill Gates.
Yeah, they were like two peas in a pod.
He shared the same ambition, the same relentless business mindset. They were constantly on the phone, planning to conquer the future of computing together.
But then tragedy strikes.
Right.
Yeah.
Before they even graduated high school, Kent died in a mountaineering accident. And the odds of being killed on a mountain in high school are roughly 1 in a million.
Wow.
So Gates experienced a 1 in a million stroke of luck, and Kent experienced a 1 in a million stroke of risk. They were equally talented, but external forces dictated entirely different outcomes.
I have to push back here, though. If luck and risk are truly that dominant, isn't that incredibly demoralizing for you listening to this?
How do you mean?
Well, why even bother trying to learn or save or work hard if we're all just spinning a giant roulette wheel and hoping for the best?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, recognizing luck doesn't invalidate your effort. It just demands humility in how you view success.
Okay, I can see that.
The danger is that society has this really unhealthy habit of studying extreme outliers. Take Cornelius Vanderbilt, who notoriously flaunted the law to build his massive railroad empire.
Right, people read his biography and say, look at that bold, visionary rule breaker. I need to be ruthless like him.
Exactly. But when the executives at Enron flaunt the law, we rightly call them criminals and tell people never to act like that. The line between bold and reckless is often a millimeter thick.
And it's usually only visible in hindsight.
Precisely. So the actionable takeaway for you listening isn't to give up. It's to stop obsessing over extreme individual billionaires whose outcomes are so heavily skewed by 1 in a million luck.
Because you can't replicate luck.
You can't. Instead, you look for broad, repeatable patterns of success. And equally, you leave room for forgiveness when assessing failures, both in others and yourself.
That shift from chasing risky extremes to looking for reliable patterns naturally brings us to the actual mechanics of growth.
Fun stuff.
Right. If we want a reliable pattern, the answer isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's time and endurance. It's the counterintuitive math of compounding. There's a brilliant comparison here in the notes to how ice ages actually start.
Oh, I love this part, because the mechanism of an ice age is completely counterintuitive.
We tend to imagine a cataclysmic, sudden deep freeze covering the globe, right?
Yeah, like out of a disaster movie. But historically, it starts with just moderately cool summers. A summer doesn't get quite warm enough to melt the previous winter's snow.
Okay, so a little snow is left over.
Right, just a tiny, seemingly insignificant layer of ice remains. But that ice reflects sunlight, which makes the following year just a fraction of a degree colder.
Which allows slightly more snow to stick around.
Exactly, which reflects more light, dropping the temperature again. It compounds year after year. It doesn't take a dramatic event, it just takes a small advantage that is never interrupted.
And then, within a geological blink of an eye, the entire Earth is covered in miles-thick ice.
Yes. And here's where it gets really interesting. That exact same uninterrupted compounding mechanic is Warren Buffett's true secret.
Right, because we hold him up as this unparalleled stock-picking genius, the Oracle of Omaha.
But the math tells a slightly different story. He's a great investor, sure, but his true superpower is endurance. Out of his $84.5 billion net worth, $81.5 billion came after his 65th birthday.
Wait, really? After 65?
Yes. If he had started investing at age 30 and retired at 60 to play golf like a normal person, even keeping his incredible rate of return, he'd only have $11.9 million.
He would be 99.9% less wealthy. That completely reframes how we think about building wealth.
It really does. Consider Jim Simons, the legendary quantitative hedge fund manager. Simons compounded money at 66% annually for decades.
Which absolutely crushes Buffett's 22% annual return.
Completely crushes it. By pure investing skill, Simons is vastly superior. Yet, Simons is much less wealthy than Buffett overall.
Because Simons didn't find his investments tried until he was 50 years old, right?
Exactly. He simply didn't have the runway to let the snow accumulate. Buffett's secret isn't just his return rate, it's the fact that he has been investing consistently for over 3/4 of a century.
It's like building wealth isn't a sprint. It's like planting an oak tree. You don't need to yell at the tree to grow faster. You just need to let it sit in the sun.
That's a great way to put it.
But the greatest enemy to that tree is our own psychology. Greed is like overwatering the oak tree until you drown its roots. The notes highlight the cautionary tales of people like Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff.
Oh, well, those are classic examples of moving the goalpost.
Right. These guys had unimaginable, completely legitimate wealth and global prestige, yet they risked all of it, literally threw their freedom away, to chase money they didn't have and didn't even need.
They completely lacked a sense of enough.
So for someone listening who is trying to build wealth, how do you practically stop your own goalpost from constantly moving further away?
Well, the psychological trap driving that moving goalpost is social comparison. And it is a game you literally cannot win.
Because there's always someone richer.
Exactly. Think about a rookie baseball player making $500,000 a year. By any historic metric, he is incredibly rich.
Yeah, he's doing great.
But if he compares himself to his veteran teammate Mike Trout making $36 million, he suddenly feels inadequate. But then Trout might compare himself to a hedge fund manager making $340 million.
And the hedge fund manager compares himself to Jeff Bezos making billions.
Exactly. The ceiling for social comparison is so astronomically high that no one ever hits it. The only way to win that battle is to refuse to step onto the battlefield.
The critical takeaway for you listening is that enough isn't about settling for too little or lacking ambition.
No, not at all.
It's realizing that an insatiable appetite for more will eventually push you to the point of regret. You will take a risk you didn't need to take, and you will break your own compounding cycle.
Knowing when you have enough is what keeps you out of trouble. But to actually let that money compound over decades, you have to survive the wild ups and downs of the market.
You have to endure what we call the tails and pay the fee.
Yes. This requires a completely split personality, honestly. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two entirely different skill sets.
Because getting wealthy requires taking risks, right? Being relentlessly optimistic about the future, putting yourself out there.
But staying wealthy requires the exact opposite. It requires paranoia, frugality, and a constant awareness that what you've built can be taken away.
Jesse Livermore is a classic example of this. He made billions of dollars in today's money by shorting the 1929 stock market crash.
A brilliant move.
Right. While real estate developers like Abraham Jermansky lost everything and were ruined, Livermore became one of the richest men in the world in a single week.
But because Livermore only knew how to take massive risks, because he was completely lacking in the paranoia required to protect wealth, he assumed he was invincible.
And he kept making massive leveraged bets and lost his entire fortune just 4 years later. You have to survive long enough to benefit from the tales.
Let's talk about these tales, because this is completely counterintuitive, too.
Yeah, we're taught in school that to be successful, you have to be right most of the time. Get an A on the test.
But the concept of tales proves the exact opposite in finance. A tiny number of extreme events account for the vast majority of outcomes. Look at Walt Disney in the 1930s.
Well, the studio was basically bankrupt, right?
Yeah, they produced hundreds of cartoons that were financial black holes. They were drowning in debt. But then they produced Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
And that changed everything.
Those 83 minutes of film earned so much money that it paid off all their debts, funded their new Burbank studio, and secured the company's future. One massive tail event covered hundreds of failures.
Amazon is the same way. They had the disastrous Fire Phone, which lost hundreds of millions.
Which everyone thought was a massive blunder at the time.
Right. But it completely doesn't matter because the creation of Amazon Web Services was a massive tail event that pays for every failure they've ever had. You can literally be wrong half the time and still make a fortune.
Provided you survive your mistakes. And the emotional cost of survival in the market is volatility. It's that sinking feeling when your portfolio drops.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Everyone does. There is a great analogy here, Disneyland. You pay $100 for a ticket to Disneyland. The cost of admission is high, but you get to ride the rides.
So market volatility is exactly like that. It's a fee.
Yes, it is the cost of admission for long-term gains. The problem is people view volatility as a fine. A fine is a punishment for doing something wrong, like getting a speeding ticket.
Okay, I have to interject here because human nature makes us absolutely hate losing.
It does.
If I log into my retirement account and see my portfolio has dropped 30% in a month, my brain doesn't say, oh, I'm just paying the Disneyland fee. It definitively feels like I am being fined. The cortisol spikes.
Oh, it physically hurts.
It does. How does a listener practically rewire their brain to endure this fee without panic selling at the bottom?
By aiming to be reasonable rather than coldly rational. Human beings are not spreadsheets. The notes recount the wild history of Dr. Julius Wagner-Jarrag.
The guy who cured syphilis.
Yeah, he actually won a Nobel Prize for it. And his method was injecting patients with a mild strain of malaria to induce brutal high-temperature fevers.
That sounds horrific.
It does. Scientifically, rationally, fevers turn on the body's immune system to fight the infection. The fever is the cure.
But human nature dictates that fevers hurt. So our instinct is to fight them, suppress them, and take medication to stop them.
Even if the fever is rationally helping us heal, to survive a 30% market drop, you don't need a cold mathematical lack of emotion. It's okay to feel the pain.
You just need a reasonable strategy you can actually stick with when the fever hits.
Exactly. Which brings us to the concept of having a margin of safety, or room for error. If you know the fever is coming, you have to prepare your body for it.
Right. Think of professional blackjack card counters. They know they only have a very slight edge over the house, maybe 51%.
Because they rationally know they're still going to lose 49% of the time, they never bet all their chips on a single hand.
They leave massive room for error.
And in personal finance, room for error mostly comes down to having cash on hand.
If you have enough cash in a boring bank account to cover your life's expenses, you were never forced to sell your investments during a market panic just to pay the rent.
That cash might not be earning a high return, but it is the ultimate emotional armor. It pays for your endurance.
So what does this all mean? We've explored how to survive, how to endure the fee of volatility, and how to stay out of our own way so compounding can do its magic. But let's zoom all the way out.
To what end? Why go through all this psychological warfare with ourselves?
Exactly. Because the ultimate currency isn't the physical stuff you can buy. It's the invisible options that wealth grants you.
It is the stark difference between being rich and being wealthy. And most people confuse the two.
The man in the car paradox is the perfect illustration of this. The author tells this story about working as a valet at a high-end hotel.
Oh, this is such a good observation.
Right. When people see a $250,000 Ferrari roll up, they almost never look at the driver and think, Wow, that guy is so cool, I admire him.
No, instead, they imagine themselves in the driver's seat.
The paradox is that the driver bought the Ferrari to signal to the world that he is successful and deserves admiration. But observers don't admire him. They just use his car as a mirror for their own desire to be admired.
It completely exposes the illusion of visible money. Rich is current income. It is the visible manifestation of cash.
Financing that expensive car, buying the massive house, wearing the designer watch.
But wealthy is the money not spent. Wealth consists of the invisible financial assets that haven't been converted into stuff.
And wealth is hidden, which makes it very hard to emulate because you can't see someone else's brokerage account or their paid-off mortgage.
But the payoff for building that invisible wealth is profound.
There's a psychological study by Angus Campbell cited in our research. He wanted to find what makes people universally happy.
And what did he find?
He found that having a strong sense of control over your life is the single most dependable predictor of positive well-being.
Wow.
It matters significantly more than the size of your salary or the square footage of your house.
So the highest dividend that money pays is simply the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today.
And think about what that means for you, the listener, in the modern world. The nature of work has completely changed. In the 1950s, a factory worker clocked out at 5 p.m., left their physical tools at the plant, and their time was genuinely their own.
But today, most of us are knowledge workers.
Right, our primary tool isn't a wrench, it's our brain. And because our tools are literally inside our heads, the work never really leaves us. We are thinking about projects during the evening commute, answering emails at the dinner table.
Waking up at 3 a.m. stressed about a presentation?
Exactly. Our time has been deeply compromised by the modern economy. Therefore, using your money to buy back your time, to buy autonomy, is more crucial for your baseline happiness now than it has ever been in human history.
This raises an important question about why we actually save. Most people think you need a specific, tangible goal to save money.
Like a down payment for a house, a new car, a vacation.
Right, but you shouldn't just save for specific things. You should save for a world where curveballs are a guarantee. Unspent, invisible wealth buys you the freedom to wait for the right job after a layoff, rather than taking the first miserable position out of sheer desperation.
It lets you retire on your own terms.
It buys you the ultimate luxury, the ability to avoid being forced into a bad corner by circumstances completely out of your control.
It really reframes everything. Let's summarize this journey we've been on today. Money isn't a strict math test where you just plug numbers into a formula and get a guaranteed result.
Far from it.
It is a mirror reflecting our behaviors, our egos, and our incredibly narrow, localized personal experiences. To truly win this game, you don't need a genius-level IQ.
You need to understand your own unique time horizon and steadfastly ignore what people who are playing a different game are doing.
You need to willingly accept and pay the fee of market volatility without panicking. And above all, you need to focus on building the invisible, unspent wealth that buys your ultimate freedom.
And as you think about applying all of this to your own life, I want you to consider your own end-of-history illusion.
What's that?
Well, we know from the psychology of money that human beings are terrible at predicting their future desires. Who you are today is absolutely not who you will be in 10 years.
That's very true.
Your goals will change. Your priorities will shift. So ask yourself, is the rigid financial plan you are violently stressing over today accidentally designed to trap you in a life built for a past version of yourself? What if the most profitable, protective thing you can do today is to simply give your future self permission to change their mind?
That is a brilliant question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Dive today. We hope this rewires how you look at the balance in your bank account and encourages you to take a hard look at the invisible wealth in your own life. Remember, sometimes the most important financial lesson isn't the guy dramatically smashing a lamp with a brick of cash to prove how powerful he is. It's the guy quietly sweeping the floors, letting time do the heavy lifting. Catch you on the next one.